አታስቢ ንጥሻ ነው
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to today's afternoon session. This class will be the first class of the high voltage classes. So we'll be discussing basically on the basic principles of the high voltage, like why we need high voltage, why we go for a high voltage, what are the advantages of high voltage, and what are the equipments which are covered under high voltage. So this is for today's. Also, we need to know why we need to do these high voltage courses as per the STCW and various other regulations. So what are the international regulations basically making us to do this course is, one is International Maritime Law, International Convention of Life at Sea, that is SOLAS, ISM, International Safety Management Code, standards for training, certifications and watchkeeping, STCW, flag state, port state control, as per the US Coast Guard, vetting inspections, classification societies. As per the 2010 Manila amendments to the STCW course, bring in requirements for engineers to undergo education and training in high voltage systems in both operational and management levels. So the requirement comes into force on the 1st of January 2017. So these are the various regulations which specify that yes, you should do these high voltage courses if you need to work on the high voltage ships. Otherwise, normally they put a limitation so that you cannot, if you don't do this course, you cannot go into the high voltage ships. So if no additional action is required for an engineer officer who do not work and do not intend to work on ships with high voltage. So these engineers will receive a following COC limitations. So that it clearly says that if you have not done a high voltage course, you will have a limitation on your COC, and then you cannot go on to the high voltage ships. So they normally endorse the COC limitations for high voltage ships. So from 1st of January 2007, this certificate is, your COC will not be valid for service on ship fitted with the high voltage systems. So it is mandatory that you must do high voltage courses if you want to serve on the high voltage ships. Okay. So these are the various regulations what specifies, because especially when the port state control or US Coast Guard comes, they check all your documents with the master that the engineer officers are qualified high voltage courses. It is mandatory to have these courses completed from a recognized institute, then only you can work on high voltage ships. So these are the various regulations which specifies that you must do this course. Okay, so that is the requirements, and that is why you need to do these high voltage courses. And we'll come to know, see what is high voltage, why we prefer high voltage, what are the advantages of high voltage, what are the disadvantages of high voltage. So there are coming chapters, we'll see this. Today's class will be concentrating on high voltage, advantages, requirements, safety factors, and then we'll go to the propulsion class on the next class. Okay. So what is a high voltage? A high voltage means any voltage more than 1000 above is considered to be high voltage. Where voltage is generated, a high voltage is a system where voltage is generated, distributed at high voltage or transformed to and distributed at high voltage. So it does not include systems where the high voltage is utilized. You see, the high voltage is produced on board ship in many other things also, like if you see an ignition transformer, it is also in 13,000 volts sometime. In the radar also, they use very high voltage, but those ships are not considered to be high voltage ships. Where a voltage is generated and distributed, and those systems are known as the high voltage. Hope you understood this. Because we produce high voltage on 440 volt ships also. Like if you see an ignition transformer, that is 13,000 volt or 11,000 volt. So those ships are not considered to be high voltage. Even both thrusters. You see 440 volt ships also, you have a boost up step up transformer which gives both thruster high voltage, but they are not considered to be high voltage ships. because there is no high voltage generation and distribution. So where you have a high voltage generation and distribution, there's as the high voltage ships. Voltage above 1000 volts are considered as high voltage according to the SOLAS regulations 1974 and IEC. So any voltage more than 1000 is considered as high voltage. Now, why we need this high voltage? Higher power requirements on board vessels is the foremost reasons for the evolution of the high voltage on ships. Now, high power requirements have been necessitated by development of larger vessels required for container transport, particularly reefer containers, container ships. Those are carrying reefer containers. They need higher power requirements. Gas carrier ships like LPGs, LNGs, they also need extensive cooling systems and propulsions also. So that is why you need a higher power requirements. And for ships with a larger electrical power demand, it is necessary to utilize benefits of high voltage installations. So why we are going for high voltage? Basically, the development of the larger vessels like container ships carrying reefer containers or gas carriers, or we need an electrical propulsions. Those ships need high voltage on ships. In marine practice, our majority of ships have three-phase, three-wire, 440-volt insulated neutral earth systems. So most of the ships you will find it is 440-volt, neutral is insulated, and three-phase, three-wire systems. Now, this power system falls in the category of low voltage and meets the power demands of medium capacity of motors up to 200 kilowatt. And in marine practice, the voltages below 1000 voltages are considered to be low voltage. And high voltage means any voltage above 1000 volt. Okay, high voltage are also classified. Some of the container ship you will find like 3.3 also. 3.3 means 3300 volt, 6600 volt, 11.1 kV also. So high voltage system, there are three types. Generally, on the ships like containers and gas carriers, you will find up to 3.3 and 6.6. 11.1 you will find on the DP ships and all. They have the other ships like oil, exploration systems where they use 11.5. Rigs and all, they have 11.1. Mostly containers and gas carriers, they come within these brackets of 3.3 to 6.6 kV. Now here you must have seen here, it says 440 volt insulated neutral earth power systems. Okay, we'll just have a touch upon this. What is an insulated neutral system? You see, isolated or neutral, it's almost same. Isolated or neutral system is the one which is totally electrically insulated from the ship's hull. So the insulated neutral system, if one earth fault occurs, no earth fault current will flow. With such a system, electric motors serving an essential equipment can be kept running until a stoppage for repair. So this is the advantages of insulated neutral system. Most of the 440 ships, we have the insulated neutral system. Reasons why it is known as the neutral is insulated. It is insulated, and the advantage is that in case of if you have one earth fault, suppose RYB phase, three phase, if one of the phase gets grounded, the critical machinery will not trip. You will have a leakage current, but it will not trip. But if it occurs two earth fault, suppose a second earth fault occurs on another circuit, suppose Y fault is grounded, suppose you have some other equipments, the R phase is also grounded, then that will be equivalent to a short circuit between these two phases, R and Y phases. At that case, the protective device will operate. So in tankers, it is not advised to have an earth neutral system because an earth fault occurring could circulate the ship's hull within the hazardous zone, which may cause explosion of flammable cargo. So in the tankers, it is still we don't use the earth insulated earth neutral systems. So hope you understood what is this insulated neutral means. The purpose of the insulated neutral system is that in case of a single earth fault in one of the phase, your critical machinery should run. Example, like a steering gear motor. Suppose one phase is, there is an earth leakage, still it should run. But if you have two phase, there is a earth leakage, it can cause a short circuit and protective machineries will trip the systems. So it's only basically to protect in case of a single earth fault. Your critical machinery should run. This is known as the insulated neutral system. Earth neutral system means earth neutral system has a neutral point connected to the earth. Especially like high voltage systems, which is more than 1000 volt, are usually earthed to the ship's hull by a neutral earthing resistor. You can see it's called neutral earthing resistor, NER. And the ohmic value of this resistor is so chosen so as to limit the earth fault current not to go more than the full load current rating of the generator. That is one criteria by selecting this NER, the current limitations. It should not be not more than the full load current rating of the one generator. So if a single earth fault occurs in the neutral earth system, suppose there is one earth fault taking place, the fault current will pass through the NER, and an earth fault relay or a CT, that is a current transformer, it will monitor, because the current transformer is keep monitoring the current flowing through the NER, and it will give a trip to the faulty circuit. So this is the advantages of using earth neutral system. Now the NER, there are some specifications. What is NER? It is called neutral earthing resistor, which is used to handle the fault current. Basically, it is to limit the current which is flowing because of this earth fault. NER is also called neutral grounding resistor also. It is used to limit the transient voltage that flow through the neutral point of the alternator to the safe level during a fault conditions. So NER is connected between the neutral of the generator and the ground. It will limit the fault current to a value that keeps away from the damage to the equipment, so far to permit adequate flow of the fault current to activation of the protection devices also. So it must withstand a huge amount of energy for duration of the fault conditions as per the IEE. Therefore, selection of NER is highly important to ensure equipment and personal safety and continuous the power supply. So this is the earth neutral system, and this is the insulated neutral system. Here it's showing two circuits. Now one here, you see here there's a fault current. Earth fault current is flowing from this system, but nothing happens. But if you have two earth faults, suppose this is also ground, then these two phase, this will be a earth fault, there will be a path will be followed. Earth fault path is followed, and this is like a short circuiting of the two phase. Suppose it's a two different phase. So this is a earth neutral system, and this is a this is a neutral isolated system. This is an earth neutral system. So let's start to seeing this. What are the advantages of on ships? High voltage advantages. See, generally, you know, like the power is voltage into current. In case of a DC circuit, it is voltage multiplied by the current is your power. But if you see the power in an AC circuit, it is voltage current multiplied by the power factor, is it? So why there is no power factor in DC circuit? In case of DC circuit, it is power is voltage into current, but in case of AC circuit, voltage multiplied by current into cos phi. That's the power factor. In case of a DC circuit, because power factor doesn't come in circuit, because you know, like current and voltage is always in phase with the DC circuit. In case of a DC circuit, voltage and current are in phase. So that is the reasons power in case of a DC circuit is voltage into current, and the power in case of an AC circuit is voltage current multiplied by power factor cos phi, you can say. And DC circuit, because voltage and current are in constant, they are not varying with the time. Whereas in AC circuits, power is stored and returned back to the supply. It's a sinusoidal waveform based on one complete periodic cycle. So you can say power is equal to V into I cos phi. Now, if you look at this slide, you see here it says for a given power, is see 440 volt, 440 kilowatt. That's a given power. That works out to be 440,000 watt. Now, if you are, suppose you are having a generator of 440 volt, the voltage produced is 440 volt. To have that 440 kilowatt power, your current is going to be 1000 amps for 440 volt. But for the same power, 440 kilowatt, if you increase the voltage into 1100 volt, suppose the generator voltage is 1100 volt, then the current is reduced by 400 amps. If you further increase the voltage from 1100 to 11,000 volt, the current is reduced to 40 amps for a given power. This is very important, for a given power. So what we can observe in this, that as you start increasing the voltage, the current is coming down. So suppose a generator system like a low voltage system, which is having a power of voltage of 440 volt, to deliver 440 kilowatt, it needs to cater for 1000 amps. So the current is going to be very high. If a 440 volt system has to deliver 440 kilowatt, the current is going to be 1000 amps. So what happens in this case, you can see when large loads are connected to low voltage systems, the magnitude of the current becomes too large. So when the current is going high means what happens? Overheating, losses are more, overheating because of high current. Copper losses are more because copper loss is I square R. So copper loss is also more. So from this is very clear that a 440 volt system to deliver 440 kilowatt, it has to take 1000 amps. At the same time, if you increase the voltage to 11,000 volt or 1100 volt or 6,600 volt, the current rating is reduced. That's the whole advantage of using high voltage systems on ships. So P is equal to VI cos phi, copper loss is equal to I square R. See here also you can see here I square R. So the copper loss will go high as the current is going high. High voltage levels are 3.3 kV, 6.6 kV, 11 kV are regularly employed ashore. So normally you will find on our ships 3.3 to 6.6 kV. So the main disadvantage by the user or a maintainer is that when you are working with high voltage, because you are increasing the voltage, so you need to have a lot of safety procedures. Your insulation requirements will increase. Because the voltage is increasing, current is reducing. Okay, so this is a basic concept. You are increasing the voltage, so the current is reduced. So in the coming topics, we will see how it is going on. Here there are few examples I have given. Now, let's say and assume a ship generating 8 megawatt of power at 440 volt from a 4 diesel generator sets of 2 megawatt, 0.8 power factors each. So if you see, each generator, feeder cable and circuit breaker has to handle a full load current. So the current, the cable connected from the generator, the circuit breaker in the circuit, all you have to cater for a very high current. Power is equal to roughly VI cos phi in case of a three-phase power, AC √3 into VI cos phi. So if you take out current from this, you get 2 into 10 raised to 6 because it is 2 megawatt generator. 2 into 10 raised to 6 divided by √3 into 440 into 0.8. That means approximately the current flowing in this case will be 3280.4 amps approximately 3300 amps. So the protection device also, like a breaker or whatever it is, protection devices should be rated at 3300 amps. So the rating of the breaker should be very high. Now, if you calculate with this a higher voltage, then what happens? Let's calculate the same for a generator voltage is 6600 volt. In the same formula, if you calculate, you see I is equal to 2 into 10 raised to 6, that is the power, 2 megawatt, divided by √3 into 6600 into 0.8. Here the current drastically reduces to 220 amps. So that means you see the breaker which was for 440 volt has to be rated 3280.4 amps, now needs only 220 amps. So your breakers, the cables, everything, the ratings comes down if you use a higher voltage. Also the copper losses, power losses, I square R is the power loss. So where I is the current carried by the conductor, R is the resistance of the conductor. So power loss varies square of the current carried by the conductor. So if the supply voltage is 440 volt, then current carried by conductor is 3280. If the voltage is raised to 6600 volt, the current carried for the same power is 218.69 amps. You can see the difference in the current. It is almost 3280, it changes to 218.69 amps. So this, it says that the power loss is reduced by a greater extent if the voltage is stepped up. Thus, it is always efficient to transmit a power at a very higher voltage. Now here, why machinery size reduces with the stepping of the voltage. Now if electric motor is consuming, let's say 500 kilowatt power. So the power is 3 VI cos phi. If you use 440 volt systems, the current is going to be 820 amps because I is equal to 500 kilowatt divided by √3 V into cos phi. So it becomes 820 amps at 440 volt. The same motor, if you increase the voltage, to 1000 volt, 3.3 volt, then what happens? 3.3 kVA. So this becomes the current P is equal to √3 VI cos phi. Current you are calculating it √3 into 3.3 into 1000 into 0.8. Current drastically reduces to 109 amps. So for an electric motor working on in high voltage systems, drawing a very low current of 1.109 amps compared to a low voltage systems. So the current carrying capacity of the conductor is reduces. Current carrying capacity of the conductor reduces. Size of the conductor is reduced. This considerable reduction in the conductor size material result in reduced size of the machinery and save space for installations. So these two examples, it's very clear that when you step up the voltage, the current is reduced. So your rating of the cables, your switch gears, everything comes down. So cost wise, rating wise, space wise, everything will be reduced. So this is one of the great advantage of using high voltage. Okay. So what we have discussed only this, for a given power, higher voltage means lesser the current. If you start increasing the voltage, the current rating will come down. See, there are some possible fault in the power systems. What are the normal fault? You'll find like phase-to-phase fault. You see, this is a generator, this is a load. Phase-to-phase means between two phases. Phase-to-phase and ground. Three-phase fault. Phase-to-phase and ground. Three-phase to ground fault. So these are the general possible fault in a power system, short circuit fault. These are the different type of faults which can happen. So what is the difference between the short circuit and short circuit level? Okay. So normally short circuit means what? Short circuit is a fault which occurs when the current in the system deviates its normal path and start flowing through an alternate path. Since the alternate path offers very low resistance, the current increases very much above the normal value. That is, we are known as a short circuit. So in case of a short circuit, we will say very high current is flowing. Why? Because it takes an additional alternate path through a very low resistance. So what happened in this case, when it takes an alternate path, that because of the low resistance, the current will increase very much, more than the normal value. That is known as the short circuit. Short circuit level is the maximum possible current that flows through a circuit during a short circuit fault. So normally when you say like a breaker is generated, say 40 kiloamps, let's say 14,000 amps. The thumb rule is that you must multiply by 100. That is a short circuit level. Okay, it has to be 10 times of it. Short circuit level is the maximum possible current that flows through a circuit. Short circuit. What is the effect of short circuit fault in a high voltage system? What happens in case of a short circuit in high voltage systems? Because of the higher current flow during a short circuit, it will result in an increased temperature, which damages the insulations and produces high thermal and mechanical stresses in the system, may cause arcing, and arc flash, arc blast. This we'll see what is arc and arc flash and arc blast. So you can understand that due to a short circuit, that can be high temperature, it can damage the insulations, it can cause thermal stresses, mechanical stresses because of the short circuit. So hope you understood what is short circuit. Short circuit means the current is taking a low resistance path. So when it takes a low resistance path, the short circuit current will become sharp. It will sharp increase. That is known as the short circuit. Short circuit level means maximum possible current that flows through a circuit during short circuit fault. So what are the methods adopted to prevent ill effects of short circuit fault? So for that, to protect against short circuit fault, protective relays are installed in the system. Immediately trips and isolate the equipment during a short circuit fault within the short time. This prevents effects of high current flow through the circuit like fuses or breakers. These all some protective relays are there to prevent short circuits. Okay, so hope this is clear. What is short circuit? What is short circuit level? Now, another important factor in case of high voltage, the calculation of short circuit levels in the system is required to be helped in designing an appropriate protective relay system. Here, this is another advantage of high voltage, that by stepping up the voltage, we are reducing the current, and that has directly, it has got an effect on the short circuit level calculations. Because you can see here, this is a 1000 kVA 415 three-phase generator. It's producing 415 volt, or let's say 440 volt or three-phase. The full load current is 1400 amps. This generator is producing 1400 amps. Now this generator is having 6.6 or 6600 volt. The full load current is only 88 amps here. The one, this is full load current is 1400 amps. Now this breaker which is here, normal rating is 1400 amps. But breaking capacity should be, it has to cater for the fault level, that is 10 times. Is a thumb rule constant multiplied by 1400. That means your total current in this case going to be 14 kA in case of a fault level. The fault level current is going to be 14 kA. So the breaker has to be rated for 14 kA. Kiloamps, that means 14,000 amps. This breaker has to be rated for 14,000 amps. Whereas in this case, it is 6,600, but full load current is 88. So if you multiply this with a 10, that's a fault level current, it becomes 880 amps. So the breaker capacity needs to be only 0.88 K, that is 880 amps only. So you can see here the breaker capacities, the difference between this breaker capacity and this one is drastically reduced because of the stepping up this voltage from 415 volt to 6600 volt. So higher this high voltage, and another advantage is the short circuit level is drastically reduced. Short circuit level is reduced. Here it is 14,000 amps. Here now we are reduced to 880 amps. So another advantage is this short circuit level is reduced. So I told you what is short circuit level is a maximum possible current that flows through a circuit during short circuit fault. This is reduced in case of a high voltage systems. Low voltage system, this is very high. Short circuit level current is very high. So you need to have a higher rating breakers. Whereas in case of high voltage, since the short circuit level is reduced, the breaker capacity can be reduced, the cost can be reduced, space can be reduced, all this another advantage. On board ship, high voltage equipments on board ship, high voltage equipment on ships. The principal items of high voltage electrical equipment would be like main generator. So because you see what are the equipments which are high voltage. Main generator for the production, that is the generator itself. Then you have main and auxiliary switchboards. Main and auxiliary HV switchboards means like you can have a main switchboard. Generally, you will find like this is basically for gas ships and all. You have a cargo switchboard also. That is why it says auxiliary also. So main switchboard means from the generator main it is coming to the main switchboard, and also you have some auxiliary switchboards along with associated switchgear, device, instrumentations. High voltage cables. These high voltage cables normally you'll find on board ship. This is the color is not like a normal cables like which you see on 440 volt ships. The black cables are used, black color, but here it's using a different color. It's a pink color cables, so that you can identify which is high voltage cable and normal cable. No other cable is supposed to pass through nearby of this high voltage. The reason is that because of the harmonics, because of the electromagnetic interference, no other instrumentation cables, no other cable should pass near the high voltage cables. Then HV to LV step down transformers to produce LV consumers. HV to LV means if you have a 6600 volt, that has to be stepped down to 440 volt. So low voltage means it is 440 volt. So you'll find lot of step down transformers for the low voltage consumers. So this is also considered to be a high voltage equipment on ships. Then HV to HV transformers. There are some transformers also from 6.6 to 2.9 or 3.3. This is also being used, so they can say it is HV to HV, like both esters. So they use HV to HV transformers, step down transformers, supplying like propulsion converters, motors, etc. Then HV motors for propulsion, thrusters, ballast pumps, cargo pumps, air conditioning compressors. See, these all motors are high voltage motors. That means their operating voltage is more than 1000 volt. Like propulsion motors or Botha-Strom motors, ballast pump motors, cargo pumps motors, air conditioning systems, compressors, all above 1000 volt. So they are called the HV motors. So generally, what are the high voltage equipments on ships? The principal items of the high voltage would be this: generator sets, auxiliary switchboards, high voltage cables, transformers, motors, etc. All we can call it as a high voltage equipment on ships. These are the high voltage typical switchboards. This I have taken from my last ship. Here you can see here. So these are the power management systems on this. And this is only for the two generators, one generator, because normally the generators, they have port side and starboard side. Two generators on the port side, two on the starboard side. So it is always, you will find high voltage two sessions like port switchboard and starboard switchboard. So two generators each on that. So general layout will be something like this for the high voltage switchboard layout. So here you can see this is HM1, that is high voltage switchboard number 1, high voltage switchboard number 2. So number 3 and 4 generators are on the number 2, number 1 and 2 generators are on the port side. So here the advantage is that you can see here, these are the tie breakers. These two breakers are the tie breakers. If you open these breakers, you can isolate the switchboards, port and starboard side. So if you see here, this is high voltage equipments. This is also, we can call high voltage equipment. This is also high voltage. Now here this transformers. This is a step down transformer, high voltage to low voltage. So 6.6 is being stepped down to 440 volt. So this is a low voltage switchboard. This is also a low voltage switchboard. Now what about this? This became a high voltage switchboard because there is no step down. It is directly coming here 6.6. So this is a high voltage. Number 1, 6600 kV switchboard. Number 2, 6.6 switchboard. So this is high voltage switchboard. This is a high voltage switchboard. This is high voltage. This is high voltage. This is low voltage. This is low voltage. And this is emergency switchboard, low voltage switchboard. This is also low voltage because it is stepped down here. 6600 is stepped down to 440 here. So this is a low voltage 2 switchboards. So generally high voltage equipments means starting from the generation. Generator, main switchboard, transformers, they all are high voltage. Now here you can see the propulsion two converters here, which is using a high voltage transformer. Two transformers are there here. Here also two transformers. The primary is delta, secondary is star delta here. Here also primary and secondary star delta. So these are all high voltage equipments. So what is here is low voltage is only this switchboard and this switchboard, this one. These three switchboard are low voltage, remaining are high voltage. Okay. You know how the layout is like this. Just to have a concept how the layout. As I told you, these are the tie breakers to isolate the switchboard. You need to isolate this one. You can even isolate this one, that is good enough. But for safety, normally you can isolate this also. This all locally, and you can remotely also you can trip these breakers to isolate the switchboard. The isolation comes only when you want to isolate the switchboard, some maintenance purpose or something. If you want to totally isolate it, you can open the tie breaker and then you can isolate this switchboard. This is the same switchboard. This is one of the switchboard. So this is like number one switchboard. So this is this one. Here you have two generators. You can see here two generator panels are there. This is number one generator and number 2 generator. So there will be one more switchboard. Will be having number 3 and 4 same like this. So all the paralleling, everything can be done from here. You can see here it has got a synchronoscope here. It has got a LAM method also here. You can synchronize it. So you can use this or this, any one of this method to synchronize it. You can manually do this or through the power management system. This is the power management systems. This is known as the HIMUP. It is taking care of the full power management of this, like starting, stopping generators, or even auto synchronizing, load sharing. Everything is done by this HIMUP. It's a power management systems on both. Here you can simulate all the things in this. If you want to do a reverse power trips or any other trips, you can set on this HIMUP systems what kilowatt you want to trip. So all those things can be done here. In this you can see here, this is a lockout relay here. Here this is a lockout relay. So all the trips, everything is connected with a lockout relay. It's a final relay which trips the breaker. Okay, so this is the layout of the high voltage switchboard. This you see here, this is a safety lockout stations. On the high voltage ships, you will find this type of lockout stations. Like various types of locks you can see here. This is a group lockout. Group lockout is using yellow locks. And the red one is for individual locks. You see the red locks are used for the individual locking. So whenever you work on any systems, you can use this red color locks for individual locking. But if 2 or 3 persons are working, they have to use this group lockout. For this, you have to use this yellow type locks. So suppose 3 people, 1 engineer also, 1 electrical also working, then you can use these locks and for locking the systems, like breaker locking or some valve locking, etc. You can use this. And this is individual one. If only 1 person is working, it is red locks. These are the various type of locking systems, like this is for basically like breakers, this for valves, etc. And these are the notice what you will find here. Whenever you work in this high voltage systems, you have to take out this one and make your date and what you are doing, everything has to be tagged on. So this is a lockout station. This is the generator, 2 generator, number 3 and 4. This it's a Wärtsilä generator. It's a 6600. It's around 600 kVA generator. 2 generators. This is the part of the generator. You see these generators are permanent magnet generator. Here you can see here this is a permanent magnet generator here. So in case of this generator, permanent magnet generator output is an AC output which is connected to the AVR. So AVR is having a constant supply which is not disturbed by the load variations or anything. It is constantly given to the AVR from the PMG. PMG, permanent magnet generator, on the same shaft which is driven by the engine. So these are for the lubrications, lubricating pumps. So this generator is having air-cooled generator. It's a water-cooled. This is the alternator part of this. This is the alternator part. On top you can see here, this is an air cooler which is cooling the alternator, because from the air which is coming, it is passing through this air cooler and blowing through this and keeping the, for winding, cooling, it is used. It's a water cooler, water cooled generator. These are the ballast pumps, high voltage ballast pumps. You can see here number 2, number 3, number 1. So these are the high voltage ballast pumps which uses 6600 volt, 6600 volt ballast pumps. Okay, this is the propulsion motor which is used. This also high voltage motor, number 2 propulsion motors. So there are 2 propulsion motors, 2 shaft. You can see this cable here. I want to show you this cable color. You see, this is the high voltage cables. The cable color looks like the pink color. It's not a black color. The high voltage cables are pink color cables and it's separately routed. It is totally separate from the other wirings. So what are the main features of high voltage systems as compared with the LV systems? So what are the features of HV systems as compared with the low voltage systems? The first thing is that HV systems have a more extensive and complex network and connections. So there are more complex networks and connections. Complex network means it is not like now 440 volt, it's little complex systems. Second thing, the HV area is strictly limited and securely controlled. All these high voltage switchboards are not like normal 440 volt ships. It is left open. It's always closed and entry is always prohibited. Everyone cannot enter into the high voltage switchboard room. Only authorized persons can enter into the high voltage areas. And it is strictly limited and securely controlled. Isolation procedures are more involved and switching strategies have to be formulated and recorded. Isolation procedures are involved. There's a lot of isolation procedure when you work on the high voltage. You cannot work on the high voltage like 440 volt ships. You have to take prior permission from the company before you work on high voltage. Suppose if you want to work like one day, you have to take 1 day before the prior permission from the company, and you have to make the risk assessment, you have to make the permits, what is the strategy, working strategies, all to be formulated and recorded once work starts. Isolated equipment must be earthed down. Any high voltage equipments not prohibited working in live. It has to be switched off, it has to be grounded. That is known as the earthing down. Appropriate test probes and instruments should be used. So there are certain test probes to be used for high voltage. Appropriate. That's not like a normal multimeter you cannot use. Electronic multimeters are not to be used. They have special test equipments, special test probes to be used. Diagnostic insulation resistance testing is necessary. Insulation resistance has to be checked. High voltage systems may be earthed in neutral and use current limiting resistors. They are using NER. All of the high voltage ships, the neutral is grounded through the NER, neutral earthing resistors. Special HV circuit breakers should be installed. High voltage switchboard uses special circuit breakers. They are vacuum circuit breakers or S2S type or ACB type. And current, magnitude and time is used for discrimination in protection and monitoring device. These are the major features. Current, magnitude and time is used for discrimination in protection and monitoring device. This is for the protection devices. Current, magnitude and time is used for discrimination. So this is what main point in this. What are the advantages of high voltage and what are the limitations? So first advantage is for a given power, higher voltage means lower current resulting in it. That is the first part. For a given power, higher the voltage, lower the current. Number 2, reduction in size of generator, motor, cables. The size of the generator, motor, cables are reduced because the current is reduced. So the cable is also reduced. It's not the size, because the insulation will become more in this case. That's why I want to tell you, insulation will be more, because the high voltage you need to have, instead of 440, you're sending 6600. So it will have a more insulation. So cable thickness will become, not cable thickness, the insulation will become more. A saving of the space and weight may be a compact equipment. Then copper losses are reduced, more efficient utilization of the generated power. The losses are reduced. Reduction in short circuit levels in the system. This is very important, because as the current is reduced, short circuit current is reduced. Short circuit current levels are reduced, and which decides the design and application of electrical equipment used in power system. So your breaker capacities, your cable size, everything is being reduced. These are the various advantages of using high voltage. So as I told you, higher current, a higher voltage, lower current for a given power. So that will make current reduce, copper loss reduces, and the size reduces, cost reduces, space reduces. The main advantage is reduction in short circuit levels. So your protective systems need not to be very high current rated one. That means a breaker, you can reduce the current rating of the breaker drastically down, because your current is reduced. Your short circuit levels are reduced. Hope you understood what is short circuit. Short circuit means any breaker. Suppose a breaker is full load current is 1400 amps. You need to find out the short circuit for that, because there is a short circuit level calculations. For this, you need to multiply with the full load current by 10 times. So that means 1400 amps multiplied by 10 times means it becomes 14,000 amps. So that is the way how you calculate the short circuit levels. It's very important, because in case of a short circuit, how the breaker has to trip and your system has to be protected. So the reduction in short circuit level happens in case, because of the current is reduced when you increase the voltage. That's very important point in case of high voltage. These are the very advantages of using high voltage. Okay. And what are the limitations? What are the disadvantages? First thing is higher insulation requirements for cables and equipments used in system. Your insulation requirements will become very high, because instead of 440, now you are sending, let's say, 11,000 volt or 6,600 volt. So the cable insulation has to be very thick. That is why the cable from outside, the cable become, the current carrying cable is same, but the insulation is become very thin, thick. So higher the insulation requirement is one of the disadvantages. And second thing is the higher risk factors and the necessary stringent adherence to the stringent safety procedures. Safety procedure has become very strict because of the high risk factor, higher voltage. So there's a lot of permits and other regulations are very strict. So these are the another limitations of high voltage. So hope you understood from these chapters what is high voltage, why we go for high voltage. So I have discussed to you what are the high voltage equipments, why we go for high voltage, what are the advantages of high voltage, what are the limitations of high voltage, and how the high voltage switchboard looks like, how the layout is going to be, what are the equipments covered under this high voltage. Okay. Next is the creepage and clearance distance. You see, this is not just simple as it is. You can see clearance means it is in air. You see, these are the three conductors here. Okay, three cables, RYB, three-phase cables, and the clearance means the distance in air. That means the distance between two R and Y. This space is known as the clearance space. And what is a creepage? Creepage is this distance. The insulator, you know, the area of the insulator is known as the creepage, because this is three phases RYB. The distance in air is known as the clearance, and this distance is known as the creepage distance. higher the voltage, greater will be the clearance and creepage distance. Clearance should not be affected by introduction of the conducting substances between bus bars unwillingly. Insulator should be kept clean and dry. So here, creepage distance is the shortest distance over the surface between two conductive parts, we can say. This is the insulator part, and it is the shortest distance over surface between two conductive parts. These two are conductive parts. This distance is called creepage. The distance in air, clearance is the shortest distance through the air between the two conductive parts. So this is known as the clearance. Clearance and creepage. It is creepage means it's the distance over the surface of two conductive parts. That is creepage, and this is the air clearance. So this is what is this is actually like when you connect any of this, like if you're connecting two phases RYB, and this is your insulating material, this is the cable connections. So in between this, how much is the insulation is there? That is creepage. How much is the air clearance is there? That is called the clearance. That's it. So this is the one where you connect the cables. You see here, you have R phase here, you have Y phase here, you have B phase here. The distance in air is called the clearance. Now this distance is called the creepage path, you can say how much. So this is shown like this, but this one is shown like this. They have put an insulator here. So this is a creepage, this is the clearance. The insulation testing of the high voltage equipments. See, normally what we are using is 500 volt megar to measure the 440 circuit. We are using maximum 500 volt megar. But in case of high voltage, 500 volt megar won't do. You have to use a 5000 volt megar. Because as you know, like what you are doing with the insulation measurement, you are impressing a high voltage across this insulator. And in case of 440 volt systems, this 440 is 500 volt megar is good enough. But if you are using a high voltage equipment, you need to have a higher voltage. So at least 5000 volt you need. So 5000 volt insulation resistance tester, it's a hand cranking or electronics. You will not find hand cranking, most of them are electronic, can be used for the equipment up to 6.6 kV. So for routine testing of insulation resistance, 500 volt megar must be applied at least 1 minute by the electronic tester. So whenever you measure the normal insulations, you have to apply the megar at least for 1 minute. And before applying IR test to HV equipments, its power supply must be switched off, isolated, confirmed dead by an approved line tester, and earthed to complete safety. You see, when you measure up a normal motor, like a, say let's say you are measuring some generator winding. First part is that you have to switch off the equipment, you have to isolate the equipment, you have to ground the equipment. This thing has to be done first. Grounding has to be done. Because when you ground it, you cannot apply the megar. Of course, you get all the phase earth values 0, insulation 0 if you ground it. So first you need to isolate it, you have to switch off, isolate, ground, then connect your insulation tester, remove the ground, then check. That is the way it should be. It is not like normal 440 systems. The insulation testing is you have to ground it first, then you have to remove the ground before testing. Why the normal insulation values are unreliable for high voltage machineries? Because IR values taken at machinery at different temperatures are unreliable, especially when the temperature difference is more than 10 degrees. So for a high voltage systems, it takes to stabilize IR values, so instantaneous reading may lead to false interpretations. So for high voltage system, IR values is not that reliable. So you have some more tests to be done. You'll see that one. So what is the procedure for insulation measurement of a high voltage equipment? Suppose you want to measure, do an insulation measurement of a high voltage equipment. How do you proceed with that? First thing is that disconnect the power supply to high voltage equipment. That means if you are measuring, if you want to take a generator stator winding resistance insulation, how do you do that? Or a motor winding, let's take generator itself. Disconnect the power supply to high voltage equipment by opening the circuit breaker and opening the isolator. So first part is that you open the circuit breaker, then take the breaker out. Then in addition, that all the phases are dead using an approved line tester. You must have a line tester It's a special probe. It's not a normal line tester. It's a very 1.5 meter lengthy probe, approximately about more than 1 meters. The probe is there because that is why it has given a distance, safe distance about 1 meter. With this probe, you have to ensure that there is no residual voltage left on the conducting part. So make sure check the live tester for proper functioning using a test tool provided along with the same. So first thing you have to check that the probe itself is working or not. So you check the probe is working. With the probe, you check the live parts, make sure there is no voltage on that. Then close the earthing switch. There's an earthing switch on the breaker, close it. So you're grounding all the 3 phases coming from the generator till the switchboard, you are grounding it. So generator to switchboard is being grounded. So any residual voltage on the line will be discharged. So this I will show you in the practical time because we will rack out the breakers and we will do the Megger test, etc. I will show you that time how these procedures, the same procedure has to be followed. How do you are doing this grounding and line tester, etc. I will show you in the lab. So close the earthing switch now and make sure the conductors are earthed. And now connect the insulation resistance tester to the conductor. Then you connect the Megger to the conductor with a safety earth connection on. So this is to ensure that the operator is not in contact with any unearthed conductor during the insulation resistance. So after you connect the insulation resistor, the safety earth is to be removed. Remove the earth connection. Otherwise you cannot measure it because all the 3 phases now grounded. You are connected the insulation tester, you remove the ground, then you measure it. Now insulation resistance is applied and recorded. After completion of the testing, again you have to put the earth again back. The switch, the breaker has to be earth, the switch has to be made again. Then disconnect the insulation tester. The safety measure to be followed for each separate IR test. So this is exactly what the testing procedure of a generator stator winding insulations. As I told you, first you need to switch off, take out the breaker, switch off the power first, take out the breaker, make the ground switch on, then connect your insulation tester, remove the ground switch, means take from the ground part, measure the resistance, put the ground switch on and finish it. That's the way it has to be done. This is a procedure for measuring insulation of a high voltage equipment. There is another test is called the polarization index test. This test is done only in case of high voltage equipments. And when the routine IR values taken are doubtful, because suppose generator you just took a insulation resistance test and you found that the values are conflicting, or sometimes you took 2 readings all differs, then you have to go for a polarization index test. This polarization index test is done using a high voltage Megger. Has got some of the Meggers has got this. It is written PA test procedure switch. You can operate that. Otherwise, also you can do directly. So when the routine IR values, like routine insulation resistance test at different temperatures are doubtful, or during annual refit or a major repairs are undertaken. Suppose the generator is in the dry dock lying idle for a long time, then you have to go for this polarization index test. And then PA test is conducted specially to determine the dryness and cleanness of the winding insulation. The purpose of the polarization index test is to determine whether winding dryness, cleanness, any moisture on the winding, moisture content or dryness or cleanness, etc. That is the purpose for carrying out the polarization index test. So what is the purpose of PA test? Is to gauge dryness, cleanness, safety of the winding insulation test systems. And when this test is carried out, annual refit time, major repairs are undertaken, or the generator is lying idle for a long time. Under these situations, a PA test is carried out. A special motorized insulation tester is required for this. So which contains, which can maintain a voltage about 1 to 2.5 kV or 5 kV, 5000 volt for about 10 minutes. Readings are taken in following 1 minute and 10 minute interval. So PA test is a ratio between the insulation resistance value measured after application of test voltage continuously for 10 minutes to the value measured in 1 minute. So how the values have taken, it's a normal measure. First you apply for 1 minute. Continuously you keep the time, check 1 minute, you keep applying it and record the reading how much insulation value you got. Let's say you got, say, 90 mega ohms, you got it in 1 minute. Then you apply for 10 minutes. Then you take again one more value. So PA means IR value after 10 minutes divided by IR value after 1 minute. So PA means 10 minute what value you got divided by the value you got after applying for 1 minute. That becomes your PA index, polarization index. So PA readings are less sensitive to changes in temperature. That is the advantage of PA readings. They are very less sensitive to temperature, whereas insulation resistance test is very sensitive to temperatures. Every 10 degrees centigrade, your insulation value can change, but PA value cannot change. It will take some time for the leakage current, while IR testing to attain saturations, hence reading is taken for 10 minutes. PA values of 2 or more considered to be satisfactory. If the value what you get by 10 minutes reading divided by 1 minute's reading, if it is more than 2, then it is considered to be satisfactory. If the value what you get after applying 10 minutes and 1 minute, if you get a value which is less than 1.5, that means you need to improve the PA value. Now, how do you improve the PA value? You can revarnish it, you can heat up the winding or revarnish the winding, then the value can be improved. Because basically PA insulation test is only to check the moisture content, the dryness, or the how winding conditions. So in case if we found the PA index value is dropping less than 1.5, then you have to improve this winding conditions by heating up or revarnishing or rewinding. This has to be done. So an electronic Megger test is essential for PA test because hand-driven Megger test will not be able to give a steady test value for a long time. Okay. So the PA value, this is where you have an exam on the high voltage also. This is very important point of the exam point of view. What is polarization index test? Why you do this polarization test? When you do polarization test, what is polarization test? What is the outcome of this polarization index test is very important. Then the other test is called the dark test. It's a dielectric absorption test. Now this test is actually, it is applied between 30 seconds to 1 minute. So dark measurement is diagnostic test similar to polarization index, but it takes ratio of insulation resistance measured in 30 seconds and 1 minute. So you can see here a dark criteria, 1.4 or more is considered to be best. And 1.2 to 10 is good, 1.0 to or less than is bad. But PA test is, you see your PA values. If you get a PA value, this is the PA test. That means you apply a Megger for 10 minutes, take the reading, divided by 1 minute reading. You divide it, let's say 100 by 90. What you get is this figure. That is 1.0 to 2. Up to 1.5 is questionable. If it is less than 1 means it is dangerous. Your winding is in a bad shape. It is having too much of moisture, too much of maybe water content. So since it is lying idle for a long time or maybe some major repair is carried out. So that means the winding is not in a good conditions. It is dangerous, less than 1. Questionable. It is 1.0 to 2. It's questionable. But from 2 to 4, above 4 is excellent. 2 to 4 is also good. So if you apply a polarization index test, if your value is falling in this range, that means your winding is not good. So what are the options to do further is that you need to revarnish the winding, you have to heat up the winding and check again, is it coming up or not? If it is not coming up, then it has to be rewinded. It cannot be used. So as I told you, this is done when the ship, suppose the generator is lying idle for a long time or in the refit time or some major repair has been done on the winding. Suppose the winding is somewhere is burnt or cracked, you rewinded the winding, then you have to go for this polarization index test and check these values. If it is above 4, it is excellent. 2 to 4 is also good, but less than 2 it is questionable conditions. The another test is called the HIPO test. This is called the high potential test. You see, high potential test is to make sure you have a good isolations. You see, normally what you do a continuity test. Why you do a continuity test? See that the cable is good. High potential test is that you have a good isolation between two parts of a circuit. You see, it is just against opposite the continuity test. We are doing every time continuity test for a cable. A cable is good from this end to this. HIPO test is to check the insulation. How good is your insulation? Having good isolation helps to guarantee the safety and quality of the electric circuits. HIPO tests are helpful in finding crushed or nicked insulation, stray wire stands or braided shielding, conductive corrosive conduits around the conductors, terminal spacing problems, tolerance errors, and all of these conditions must cause a device to fail. High potential test. That means you are applying a high potential across this insulation and confirming that your insulation is good or the isolation is good. Like normally a motor contactor in the starter. What do? We normally, like the contactor is, sometimes the contactor is not make and break, it is not breaking it. So you always check whether it is, when you release it, it is breaking or not. That is also a potential test. You are applying a potential and seeing that there's a good isolation. So this is just opposite of a continuity test, where you check a cable whether it is continuity is there or not. So high potential test is to checking a good isolation. The safety measures after insulation testing is very important. Whenever you measure any insulations, whether it is motor or generator or anywhere, you must discharge any static charge acquired during the insulation testing time. Because you must have seen, like when you suppose you are doing a Megger test of a motor, you Megger test with a Megger and you just remove it, but still there are some residual charges because of this Megger. You need to take a particular wire or something and just ground it so that any residual charges is being discharged. Okay, high voltage generators, especially for the high voltages, are capable of storing a dielectric charge in the main stator winding following a high insulation test. So any testing of the main stator must be followed by a discharge to earth or ground for at least 1 minute. At least 1 minute you must discharge it. It's very, very important. Most of the time we don't do this on board ship, but it can give a shock, especially in case of high voltage equipments. You will never notice it. If you apply a 5000 volt Megger and if you don't discharge the residual charges, it can give a great shock, which will be, people are ignore about it, but you must discharge any stored charges. So do not attempt to touch the main output terminals until all the residual charge has been discharged. 440 and high voltage is totally different concept, different safety procedure. You have to be extremely careful when you work with the high voltage, because a small, you can imagine a 220 volt shock can be so lethal, but it can, what happen when you place with the 6600 volt? It will forever, you will have no time to escape. So you have to be very careful when you work with the high voltage, especially with a Megger. When you use a 5000 volt Megger, you should be very, very careful. Otherwise, it can lead to very dangerous situations, can shock or hazardous. Okay, these are the safety measures after insulation testing. How the hotspot in a bus bar of a surrounding area is checked. You see, in this switchboard, there are some hotspots. The hotspots comes up in the switchboard because the bus bars all are linked with the nut bolt. It is bolted, the bus bars. Bus bar means it is a conductors, the copper bars are there. It's all linked. It's all linked with the nut and bolt. At time, because of the vibration of the ship and all, the nut, it can become loose. You'll find slowly the bus bar, the contact is losing, and that place will become very hot spot. So they have, in the high voltage equipment switchboards, you will find backside there's a window is provided here. Through this window, you can use an infrared cameras. Normally, they supply these infrared cameras on high voltage ships. Through these windows, you can use an infrared camera and take a thermal image of each hot spots on this bus bar. So this camera can identify, is there any hot spot? If there is a hot spot, that means there is something is loose on the bus bar. You have to isolate that particular section of the switchboard and you have to correct it, or you have to tighten up this. So here this insulation testings, as I told you, one is IR test, one is the polarization index test. IR test is also for 1 minute. You have to apply the Megger for 1 minute in case of IR test. In case of polarization index test, you have to apply for 10 minutes. Then you have to apply for 1 minute. 10 minute watt reading you get divided by 1 minute reading. That reading value, there is no unit for that. You will get like 1.5, 2, 3, 4. This has to be more than 2. 2 to 4 is good. Above 4 is excellent. Less than 2 is questionable. Less than 1.1 is very dangerous situations. So polarization index test is very important test. It is carried out especially on the high voltage equipments. And what it shows is that it is used to gauge the dryness. That is the main thing, dryness or moisture, cleanness, safety of the winding insulation system. So if you get a value less than the 2, that means the winding has to be cleaned, the winding has to be dried up, the winding has to be revarnished, the winding has to be heated up. Again, check the values, again try out more till you get higher values. If you don't get higher values after 3-4 attempts, that means the winding has to be rewinded. And this is done when you suspect IR values are the IR values what you get, because IR values dependent on the different temperature, it varies. So when the IR values taken are doubtful, you suspect that something is wrong after taking an insulation resistance values, or during an annual refit, or after a major repairs have undertaken, then PA test is done. For this, you need a 5000 volt Megger. Some of the Meggers, you use a normal Megger. You can use a normal Megger, then you need to have a stopwatch to take the reading at 10 minutes and 1 minute. Some of the Megger has got this facility like PA test facility is there. In that, once you select into PA test, it will automatically read for 10 minutes, then it reads for 1 minute and gives you the reading. So this is possible with the normal Megger also, or a Megger which is having a PA facility also. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Why we are not doing this PI test for low voltage equipment? I mean, why it's only for high voltage?
Yeah, because this
same problem can happen also for low voltage.
No, because polarization index test is done with high voltage equipment. We are using a high voltage Megger for this. 440 ships, we need only 500 volt Megger. And the insulation requirement is totally different in case of high voltage and the low voltage. Because high voltage, we have got a very higher insulations comparing with the low voltage. Whether it is a cable, whether it is winding, whatever it is, insulation thickness is too high. That is why we go for this PA test. Otherwise, low insulation, things which are having a low insulation, normal insulation test is good enough to measure it. You understood?
Okay.
So 440, you are using maximum 500 volt Megger. You don't use 1000 also. 500 volt Megger, we are using it. But high volt, because of the low insulations. The insulation material is very less if you look at the high voltage and the low voltage systems. In high voltage, you need higher insulation requirements. This electrical shock, you see electrical shock because the high voltage, it's a part of high voltage. Electrical shock also you should be aware. Electrical shock is experienced when any part of the body comes in contact with a live conductor or any equipment which is there is a leakage of electric current, and another part of the body is in contact with the same equipment on the earth. A shock current as low as 15 milliamps, AC or DC, may be fatal. And 15 milliamps, 1.5. Electrical shock is due to the flow of current through the body. It is related to the magnitude of the current, the body resistance, the duration of the current flow. So electrical shock, what are the factors affecting the electrical shock is magnitude of the current, duration of the current flow, body resistance. And the levels of leakage current can be from 1.1 milliamps, like threshold of prescription in 60 cycles AC supply, Let go level, that means it is let go means painful, but voluntarily muscles control is maintained. Still it's okay, 9 milliamps. Hold on level means unable to go let off muscles, that is 16 milliamps. Fibrillation level means heart start fibrillating instead of beating in rhythm, that means 23 milliamps, 15 milliamps, above 23 milliamps, 15 milliamps. Fatal level is about 100 milliamps, 100 milliamps. So 15 milliamps is actually considered to be fatal because it can affect your heart. That is why even 15 milliamps, 15 milliamps can cause problems because it's directly affecting your heart. Precautions against electrocutions. What are the do's and don'ts? Get to know the ship's electrical systems and equipment and become familiar with the normal indications on switchboard instrumentations. Operate and maintain the equipment according to the manufacturer's recommendations. Ensure all guards, covers, doors are securely fitted. Fill up the electrical isolation certificate before carrying out any maintenance on work. First thing is you should have proper isolation. That is very important. You should have a permit to work systems. You should have a risk assessment. And these are the basic parts. Always you have to work. You can work at certain circumstances on the live systems also. But in that you need to have a special permits. Also you should have a standby person. In this also you should high voltage, you must have a standby person always. One person cannot work alone. There should be two persons. Precautions against electrocutions. Work on live parts. Except emergency, yes, you can work sometime on the live also. Live conductor exposed, overload, neglect, abuse equipments, use the wire ways of storage. Use the wire ways of storage. So this is the do not conditions. At higher voltage level, electrical shock potential is lethal. That means higher voltage level. Why we say high voltage is more dangerous? Why we need strict procedures? Because high voltage level means electrical shock is lethal. Body resistance decreases with increase in voltage level. This is very important. Your body resistance is the whole factor which will help you to withstand an electrical shock. But with a high voltage level increases, your body resistance will start reducing it, which enhances the current flow. That is the reasons why we say high voltage is more risky. For a shock, if you look at the say shock concern, your body resistance will decrease with increasing the voltage. As the electric current shock as low as 50 milliamps at HV can be fatal, the risk to people working on HV areas can greatly be minimized by diligent application of sensible general and company regulations and procedure. So that is the reason on high voltage equipments, you cannot work or you cannot open the equipment just like that. It's all totally sealed. If you look at a breaker or if you see a switchboard, it's all sealed with the locks. So unless you don't have a proper sequence of keys, for opening in a procedure wise, you cannot open the high voltage switchboard breaker like 440. So for this, you need to have a permissions from the company. You need to have a risk assessment. You need to have a permit to work systems. You should have a standby persons. So all the procedure has to be followed in case of high voltage. And HV work on board, due to the limited space, may have a carried out close proximity to persons not familiar with the HV hazards. So the area must be cordoned off from surrounding work which may be going on or danger notice well posted. Wherever you work on a switchboard or wherever they work on suppose you are working on a motor high voltage, the area has to be cordoned, which security has to be, you have to put the notice, also you have to put the blocking so that nobody can come inside. The area has to be isolated. So these are the dangers. And the use of instruments when taking measurements of high voltage can increase the risk of injury when they are inadvertently used without earth conductor conductor. You see, the first thing is in the high voltage system is that grounding. Everything has to be grounded before you touch anything. Whole purpose of grounding is that any residual voltage has to be discharged to the ground or earth. That's the first part. Whether you use a megger or whether you use you test the voltage or whatever it may be, the grounding is the first part. So this can result in enclosure of an instrument becoming live at high voltages. So another thing is that the instrument which you are measuring can increase the risk of injury if they are used without earth. High voltage equipment stores the energy after disconnection. For example, 6.6 switchboard, a fatal capacitive charge may be still present on the equipment even after days. So even if you switch off, it can have because the cable, the cable it's like a capacitance charge. It can have some charges in this. So this has to be discharged immediately. If you leave it idle like this also, it will take time to discharge. If during maintenance, HV circuit is removed from the system, it must not be worked on, or HV cabling can recharge itself to a higher voltage from the induced voltage from the nearby live HV cabling. So it can also cause, because of the nearby cabling, it can get again recharged. The access procedure to high voltage switchboard and equipment must be strictly controlled. That is why high voltage switchboards are prohibited to place on board ship. Without only authorized people are allowed to enter into the high voltage, not like normal 440 switchboard. Anybody can enter into high voltage switchboard, it is not allowed. By using a electrical permit to work systems, PTW, and isolation procedure involving a safety key systems and earthing down. All high voltage switchboard panels are having safety keys. If you want to open a breaker cover front side or back side or anywhere, there are keys for this, safety keys. So the keys are having a security safety systems. So that procedure has to be followed by opening these paneling covers. And earthing down is first thing. First is earthing down, then safety key system. These are the two important factors in this. And before the work is commenced on HV equipments, PTW must be issued. Permit to work is issued by the chief engineer. After he is satisfied that all the precautions have been taken, all the isolations has been done, then he gives a permit to work systems. So you need to have an approval from the company also when you work on the high voltage equipments. The permit is usually the last stage of plant maintenance task organized and approved by the authorizing officer to be carried out by the responsible person. Usually testing of the high voltage can be carried out after the circuit earth has been removed. An example of this can be insulation testing, as it involves the system be checked for insulation to earth. See, you are grounding a switchboard for working. Suppose you want to work, you want to do a Megger test or a PI test, you need to remove the ground. So the grounding is not always done. The grounding is done initial stage, and once you know that there is no residual charges, you checked with the probe that there is no residual charges, you can remove the ground and you can work. So the grounding can be removed. It's not that the ground is always connected, because for a Megger test and all, you have to remove the grounding. So grounding can be removed. Second thing, a sanction to test. Suppose you want only a test. One is permit to work, that is for working. Second thing is to test. For test also there is a procedure that is called sanction to test, should be issued in a manner same like a permit to work. A sanction to test should never be issued on an apparatus on which permit to work is still in force, or on which sanction to test is in force. Maintenance and repair cannot be carried out under a sanction to test. So you have a sanction to test also. That means you can only test the equipments. Permit to work means you can work on the equipment. That are two different things. Because when you are working, you cannot do a test. So permit to work is separate, sanction to test is separate. Like you want to test a breaker, whether the breaker is working or not. So at that time you cannot work. The breaker has to be put back. You are doing only test. That is called sanction to test. Permit to work means you are doing some repair of the breaker. That is permit to work. For a Megger test, it's a permit to work. Earthing down means, earthing down is required to ensure that any stored electrical energy in the capacitance of the equipment insulation after the isolation is safely discharged to earth. Earthing down means any residual charges which are there is to be grounded. So there are some special grounding cables has to be connected, or it has got an inbuilt ground switch. You can make it, then also you can discharge any residual charges. Higher levels of insulation resistance required on HV leads to high value of insulation capacitance. This is coupled with a high voltage, means that energy stored on HV equipment is far greater than its LV. So W means what? W is the energy stored in that. That is, HV leads to high insulation capacitance, C into V square by 2 joules. This is the energy stored. So the energy stored will be very high in case of low voltage also. So you have to earth down to discharge any residual charges, because this is a property like a capacitance property of the cable. If you see a cable, it has got like a capacitance property because it stores some charges because it is insulators inside. So electric energy in the capacitance of equipment insulation after isolation is safely discharged. Earthing down ensures that isolation equipment remains at a safe potential during work procedure. So why we do earthing down? It will ensure that the isolated equipment remains at a safe potential. Means there is no potential in that. All the residual energy is discharged to the ground and during the work procedure. That is the purpose of earthing down. So why we need earthing down? Earthing down ensures isolated equipment remains at safe potential during work procedures. There are two types of earthing down, that is called circuit earthing and busbar earthing. You can do in two ways. One is circuit earthing and busbar earthing. An incoming or an outgoing feeder cable is connected by heavy earth connection from the earth to all the three conductors after circuit breaker has been racked out. That means you take out the circuit breaker, then you use these earthing cables, connect the cable, connect to the ground. Okay, this is done at the circuit breaker using a special key. The key is then locked in key safe. The circuit breaker cannot be racked until the circuit earth has been removed. In this case, circuit breaking, okay, circuit breaking means when you rack out the breaker, at the bottom of the breaker, there is a key slot. You have to put a handle there and make the handle down. That will make an automatic grounding there. Okay, this is called your circuit is totally earthed. That means from generator to breaker is grounded. Generator to incoming of the breaker is grounded, and outgoing to the switchboard is still not grounded because you cannot ground the switchboard. Otherwise, you will be grounding the whole switchboard. So only a grounding from generator to breaker. That is using a special earthing that is known as the circuit earthing. And busbar earthing, when it is necessary to work on section of a busbar, suppose you want to work on the busbar itself, then it must be completely isolated from all possible electrical sources. So if you want to work, say, number 1 switchboard, you have to isolate, open the tie breaker, make 1 and 2 switchboards separate. Then this will include generator, incoming, section, bus tie breakers, transformers, etc. all. And bus bars are connected together and earthed using a portable leads. They are supplied with the 3 portable leads. 1 lead R phase, 1 for Y phase, 1 for B phase, connected on the 3 bus bar and 1 common ground at the bottom. So you can make a grounding. That is called bus bar earthing, circuit earthing. It's very important. What is earthing? What are the type of earthing? Earthing down at HV switchboard has got 2 types. One is circuit earthing and bus bar earthing. Circuit earthing is done on the breaker itself using a key safe. So with a key, you can make a circuit earthing. Bus bar earthing is using a portable cables. So next one is the arc blast and arc flash and arc blast. Okay, arc, you know what is arc? Arc is a discharge of electric current across a gap. You see, when you open a breaker, there is an electric current. You know, there's an electric current will flow. That is called arc. Arc fault is higher power discharge of electricity between 2 or more conductors. Radiation of heat in the arc is very high and it can very easily set a person's cloth on fire. So what is an arc? You see, this is arc. Electric arc is a short circuit through air. Now here, this is the electric arc. So like when these are the 2 phases here. You can see here, this is the electric arc. Electric arc is a short circuit through air. Arc blast means because of arc, there's an arc flash. There will be arc flash, and arc flash, there will be arc blast. So it goes like a chain. First arc flash, arc blast. Arc blast pressure derives from 2 things. First, the expansion of the metal in the boiling, vaporization state. Secondly, the heating of ambient air by passage of arc. Mixed vaporized air and metal in the air near the arc generates rapidly expanding plasma of ionized vapor, which can lead to extensive injuries. So first is an arc. An electric arc is a short circuit through the air. So this is an electric arc. Like when you open a breaker also, you'll find electric arc. It's a short circuit through the air. Now, what are the causes of electric arc? It can be because of the dust, it can be because of the impurities, corrosion, condensation, and accidental touching, dropping tools, over voltage, across narrow gaps, failure of insulating materials, equipment failure. Suppose you have two phase here, R and Y. You touch, suppose you by mistake you shorted these two. So that is an electric arc. Now, arc blast. The flash causes an explosive exertion of air and metals. Because of electric arc, there is an electric flash. Because of electric flash, there is an arc blast. So, an arc can lead to arc blast. It goes like this. Electric arc, starting is from electric arc. That caused an electric flash, arc flash. Because of arc flash, there is a blast came. Blast means it's an explosion. Electric, this is an arc flash. Because of this flash, you landed up in the arc blast. How this electric flash came? Because of a short circuit. So the event goes like this. Electric arc, that will lead to arc flash, that will lead to arc blast. Okay. So these are the causes of arc, like a dropping a tool. Suppose a tool is dropped, you find an arc, that is an arc. If there are, suppose a positive and negative, you shorted both on the battery terminal, you find an arc, that is an arc. Because of this arc, there can be arc flash, and that arc flash can lead to arc blast also, an explosion also. You see, arc blast means it is producing a full explosion, pressure waves, sound waves, molten steel, sharpener. So it's a full explosion. That is arc blast. It's the last. So what are the forms of arc flash energy? What are the energies coming from this arc flash? It can be big noise because an explosion. It's a noise. It's an expansion. It's an expand. It can vaporize. It can thermal radiation is there. Heat. So these are all forms of arc flash. It can be noise. It can be an explosion. It can be an expansion. It can be vaporization or thermal radiations. Now, what are the injuries you can cause because of an arc flash? Because it's a full explosion. Arc caused arc flash caused an arc blast. It can cause an electric shock. It can cause severe burns. It can cause blindness. It can cause wounds because some sharp things are flown. It can cause a lung blast injuries. It can affect your lung. It can rupture the eardrums. The pressure waves can cause some damage. All this can take place because of arc flash injuries. Okay. So this is a full arc blast means it's a full blast. So what is arc? It's a short circuit. Because of the electric arc, there can be arc flash. And because of the arc flash, that can lead to an arc blast. So what is meant by arcing, arc flash, arc blast in high voltage systems? Arcing means it's a production of unintentional electric arc during opening of a circuit breaker. When you open a circuit breaker, there can be arcing. Isolator. When you open an isolator, when you open a contactor, due to the discharge of electricity through medium. So arcing means it's a production of unintentional electric arc during opening of a circuit breaker. When you open a, like even an MCB, when you open and close, you find a spark. You see, you find an arc. That is called arcing. And isolator or contactor due to the discharge of electricity through a media between two contacts is called the arcing. Arcing also occurs when heavy current flow to the earth during a earth fault or a short circuit, or due to insulation failure also there can be arcing. This is very important because many times they asked in the examination also what is arc flash, what is arc blast. So you have to mention what is arc flash, arc blast. separate what it is. So during arcing, temperature at arc terminals can go up to 20,000 degrees centigrade, which is around 4 times the temperature of sun surface. So it can go high up to this. The intense light formed at the point of arc is called the arc flash. So this is the definition for arc flash. The intense of light formed at the point of arc is called arc flash. What is arc flash? This is the answer. What is arcing? Arcing is a production of unintentional electric arc during opening of circuit breaker, isolator or contactor due to the discharge of electricity through the medium between two contacts is called arcing. Intense of light formed at the point of arc is called the arc flash. So because of the arcing, you have an arc flash. Now, instant heating of the surrounding air surrounding the arc occurs and the conductors vaporizes, resulting in formation of a high pressure wave. If the pressure wave is not released, it results in an explosion. That is called arc blast. Suppose inside a light fittings, there are some loose connections. There is an arc form. Because of the arc, there is a flash. Because of the flash, it causes an arc blast. So you can say like that. Instant heating of the surrounding air surrounding the arc occurs and the conductor will get vaporized, resulting in formation of a high pressure wave. If the pressure wave is not released, that is why in case of, you see the light fittings, EXD light fittings, there is a there is a air hole in that produced to release the pressure. Okay, that is to reduce this, to avoid this arc blast. So arc flash, arc blast. It's very important. What is mean by arcing? What is arc flash? What is arc blast? What are the hazards of arc flash and arc blast? Now, what are the hazards? What can happen if there is an arc flash or arc blast caused? Permanent damage to electrical equipment. The equipment damage, irreversible damage to human tissues. Human injury is the main thing because it's a arc, because like a starter panel, you find there's a short circuit. You're standing in front of it. You can get burned. It can affect your ears, it can affect your eyes, it can affect your skin. So irreversible damage to human tissues. Arc flash causes intense UV light, resulting in permanent severe damage to the eye. Then pressure wave from the arc blast compresses the eyes, resulting in permanent severe damage to eye visions. Nose may damage, hearing facility may damage, eardrums may get damaged, and the equipments can explode also. Ejecting parts, the equipment can explode, some can get parts can be thrown away. This may result damage to the personal and properties. Flammable materials present of the arc may be ignite, causing secondary fires. It can cause a secondary fire also. So what are the hazards of arc flash? It's a very important question, this one also. What are the hazards of arc flash, arc blast? So hope we are clear. What is arc? Definition of the arc. What is arc flash? What is arc blast? What are the causes of arc flash, arc blast? What are the hazards of arc flash, arc blast? Okay. Okay, the switchgear I will, next class we'll see what are the type of switchgear. Before that, let's see from beginning what has been covered. Main important points just I highlight to you. This, hope you are clear with this. What are the international requesting for the knowledge, why we should do this high voltage course? Okay, this is as per the International Maritime Law and STCW, flag state, port state control, US Coast Guard, vetting inspections, classification societies. As per the STCW 2010, it is mandatory that if you have to work on high voltage ships, you have to do this high voltage course. Otherwise, you will have a limitation on your COC. What is high voltage? Any voltage above 1000 volt is considered to be high voltage. Why we need high voltage on ship? Because of the power requirements. Okay, what are the equipments covered under high voltage? Then what is insulated neutral systems? Very important. What is insulated neutral systems? What is earth neutral system? Difference between neutral, insulated, neutral, isolated, advantages, disadvantages. Advantage of high voltage on ship. What are the advantages of high voltage on ships? Advantages and limitations, very important. Advantages and limitations. For a given power, higher the voltage means lower the current. So it will result in reduction in size of generators, motors, cables, ease of installations, lower losses, reduction in short circuit levels. Very important points. Limitations, higher installation requirements and higher risk factors and strict safety procedures. Okay, what is clearance? What is creepage? Difference. Clearance means the space, it's a clearance between the air space, air, it is in air. What is the distance between air is called the clearance, and this creepage means it's the distance or the surface between two conductive parties is the creepage, and this is the clearance. If it is asked, you can draw this diagram. Insulation test. What is the procedure for insulation test of high voltage equipment? What are the procedures? How you proceed? If you want to do an IR test, what are the procedures? What is polarization index test? Why you do polarization index test? If the values are less, then what is the next course of action? What is Dart test? Dielectric absorption test. This is also another type of test similar to polarization index test, which is carried out, but it is 30 seconds to 1 minute. And here also you can see here Dart test 1.4 is more, 1.2 to 1.0 is to considered to be good. If it is less than 1, then it becomes bad. This is also another type of diagnostic test, same like a polarization index test. So polarization index test values you can see here, less than 1, 1.1 is means is a dangerous, 1.0 to 2 is questionable, 2.4 is good, 4 above 4 is excellent. Hyper test means it's a high potential test. It is to make sure that you have a good isolation between the parts of a conductor. It guarantees the safety and quality of the electrical circuit. It's only for the insulation testing, high pot test, high potential test. Earthing, what is earthing? What is circuit earthing? What are the type of earthing? Circuit earthing, berthing, bus bar earthing. The difference between circuit earthing and the bus bar earthing. Circuit earthing means it is having an inbuilt earthing switch. Bus bar earthing means you to use a portable earthing cables to connect it for grounding. Okay, this we have discussed. Okay, gentlemen, I think it's enough. See, next class we will see the high voltage switchgear and the propulsions. Next class is very important. I will be covering up on the propulsion part, the converters, VSD converters and the LCA converters. That will also help you for your final main subject also. What are the type of converters and switch gears? Okay. Thank you for attending the classes.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.